Welcome back to the Raice Brothers podcast. Super excited today to have on who's a woman who is known around as to many people as Morah Weber. And she has had a profound impact on so many people's lives, on their yiddishkeit, on their davening, on their connection, on the Torah. And this incredible woman is lucky enough to be our Aunt Paula. Aunt Paula Weber, and we're really excited today. There's a number of things that would like to really explore. First and foremost, the life that you've lived, the stories that you've had from your childhood, building up, growing Torah and Yiddishkeit on the Lower East Side, and the incredible amount of Gedolim that we met. Our elder Zaydeh, your Zaydeh, the Zaydeh Shia Leizer, was an incredible person who was sent over by Tzadok HaKohen, and he came to America, and he did such incredible work building up the Jewish community there. So we want to get into that as well. And if you hang around long enough, then we're going to get to hear an incredible story about Uncle Marcel and how he left Europe by the war with his parents, with his father, who ended up being a spy. Wild story. So hang in, but we're going to start from the beginning. Hey, Aunt Paula, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, I'm okay. I am surviving.
That's good. So let's start from the beginning. You obviously, as a child, were very bright. You were valedictorian, elementary school, high school, Stern College, and you did all that at a very young age. So start from the beginning. Tell us about your young childhood, growing up together.
Okay, I don't remember when I was born, but as a little girl, I remember that our lives were very centered around Zaydeh. He was truly a patriarch, and he was the favorite male in my life. I hope my father will forgive me, but Zaydeh was definitely a personality. And also my Aunt Goldie, Adnei Be'esrim. She used to come and talk to my father a lot, and they didn't think I could hear, but I did. I remember I was maybe 3 years old at her wedding. And I said, Mommy, who are all those people there? And she started to say, the Yehoshua Rebbe, the Kamana Rebbe, the Biana Rebbe, the Scott. I said, huh? She said, yeah, they're Zaydeh's friends. So anyway, these people were to me Zaydeh's friends. And the most special lesson that Zaydeh taught me when I was little, I really thought to be from means you have to be happy. It's funny because I was learning this week in the Siva Shalom that Yom Simcha is Shabbos, but Simcha really is the key to everything. I was thinking, wow, my Zaydeh knew what he was talking about. But I was also, he was just always such a happy person. But as I grew a little older, I was in the first class of Beis Yaakov, etc. And when I started to learn Rashi, I decided to go Shabbos afternoon and test Zaydeh. I didn't realize everybody learns Rashi. And he didn't let on either. But he used to joke with me, and I used to say, Zaydeh, Yiddish is a language of the ghetto. Ivris is a language of Torah, and English is a language of America. So please don't speak to me in Yiddish. His eyes would twinkle and everything else. And I remember when I was 18, he said, Paula, come. He wanted to talk to me. Well, that's a much later memory, but I still remember he said to me, Shtayt, in the Gemara, and he started to read to me that you get off your pedestal and you need your zivik. I said, Zaydeh, you read it wrong. You learned it wrong. You get off your pedestal, you go to the higher one. That's where your zivik is. And he said, in Yiddish, that's what happened when women learn. But his eyes twinkled. But my memory is we used to go to a family hotel called Weinberg's in Parksville, New York. It's a wonderful place. We're very Hamish. And at Shabbos, every Rebbe you ever heard of came up. It didn't matter. Those days, it didn't matter how you were dressed, etc. Everybody talked to everybody else. And my Zaydeh, of course, he was the best in the whole world. One day he said to me, come, Pearlie, I'm going to Camp Yeshiva. That was in Swan Lake, New York. So I went. We came there. Zaydeh gets out of the car, and the Bachram are all waiting for him, and they're dancing around singing his Nagunim. Well, I felt like the Queen of England. I don't think I could ever replicate that feeling. But that's the way it was. In those days also, many women went to Lakewood hotels in the winter for vacation. So I was little, I couldn't have been more than 3, before because my mother wouldn't take me out of school. And I remember going, and you know, did you ever go to Lakewood? They have a lake and the horse and buggy. Zaydeh came also, and he told the guy, all right, and he drove the buggy around the lake. So that made it much more special for me. But these are the memories I have of Zaydeh. He was really amazing man, always a tish, always a million people there. And he had a secret room. He made his own wine for Pesach every year. No one's allowed to go in there. And I have to admit that one time, Zaydeh was sleeping, Bubba was sleeping, and I said to myself, I got to peek into that room. And I really thought that lightning would strike me. I opened the door, I saw the kid, I closed the door, and I ran out. Anyway, it was all okay. All right, I'm talking too much, but I want to ask you.
No, it's good. Zaydeh also, he during Prohibition, he made his own brumfen, right? He made his own booze.
That I don't know, because I don't go for those things.
Oh, I
but
remember.
I do know, my father told me that because Rav Tzadok said he had to keep everybody, you know, they went to Shlomo Krieger. My father said when Zaydeh would come, they'd sit on the ball at recess time. They didn't want him to see. But he really was a very big figure. People used to say to me, who are you? I'd say, Paula Fogel. Shia Leizer's an Einikel. I used to say, but my tata off, you know. They don't want to know about the fathers. And Zaydeh also, he got sick in the middle of the night. The phone would ring. Everybody came. You know, all his sons showed up. And my father said we could not leave the Lower East Side because we have to live near Bubba and Zaydeh. And I'm very happy about that because it really enriched my life. As I said, you know, all my experiences with Zaydeh. Zaydeh was not a no person. Didn't matter how you came in dressed. And this is why he was able to succeed so much in everything. I mean, you want me to tell more things? Ask, and I'll tell you.
No, tell us. Meaning,
so I was growing up and I was a kid, you know. I'm the kind of kid, don't tell me what to do. Teach me. Explain to me. So when I got married, when I was in Stern College, I had my best friend, Hashem sent up to me. She became my mother's fifth daughter because she came from Kansas City, Missouri, and she was the epitome of Kolat Sameil Hulamayim. She wanted to learn and become from. She ultimately married a guy who was learning Kollel, you know. But she was my mommy and daddy's really fifth daughter. Like she would eat all the liver I hated and the spinach I hated. But
who was
anyway,
this?
one
what
day,
was her name?
I don't know if I should say it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it was Audrey Shapiro, but now that she lives in Beit Vagan, that's nowhere near her name.
Okay.
Now it's my friend Chana. Anyway, Rabbi Chaim Levine, Olav HaShalom, big tzaddik. He was like her guru, you know, because she wasn't in any of my Hebrew classes because I was on the top level. And one day he said to me, hey, Paula, I'm going to speak to Chana about Audrey, Kisui Rosh. Do you want to hear? I said, sure. And I know then that he did the whole little sikha for my benefit. And when I walked out of there, I want you to know I graduated Beis Yaakov. I never thought I would cover my hair. Never. I walked out of there and I said, what if he just discussed with me Hilchos Shabbos? Ein brera. So I came home and I said, Mommy, sit down. I want to teach you something. My mother was secretary of Beis Yaakov. She did not cover her hair. None of my aunts did. And Mr. Zaydeh with a shram, with a bekasha. Told you he was so good. I said, and I told Mommy whatever I learned. And I said, so be aware that when I get married, I will be covering my hair. The next day, my mother was wearing something on her head. And she went to teach. And she came home and I remember my father said to her, huh? I said, I don't speak good Yiddish. He didn't ask for it. So Mommy said, listen, we send our children to learn. Paula learned, she taught me. So now I have to do what I learned. Anyway, so that's the kind of thing, you know, with me. Like, don't tell me what to do. Educate me. And that's the way I feel when it comes to children and everybody else. You know, you have to set an example by what you do, and that works much better. Okay.
You mentioned that Zaydeh was friends with all these different Rebbes, and that everybody really. Did he have any kind of official capacity in the community?
He really did. He had his own shul, and I used to know my father. I used to say, "Where'd Zaydeh go?" He went out with his friends to the baths in Sharon Springs. It was a place they used to go together, all of them. Things like that. My best friend was Holocaust survivor because her father gave her away to the Poles. Her mother and the original family, they all died. She had white hair and blue eyes. Anyway, she came to behest in the 4th grade, and my mother said, I used to say, this girl stands in the corner and cries. She doesn't know anything. My mother said, you have to befriend her. She became my best friend, and when I used to sleep over, we had to walk through the Biana Rebbe. She was raised by her uncle and aunt. She didn't want to go to her family. And I had to say all the time, good night, Rebbe, good night, Rebbe. And the Biana Rebbe used to call me over to the bed. No, and in Yiddish, she'd say, so how is Zaydeh? It was funny because they were good friends. Anyway, I have no idea. I was a little kid. You know, people used to joke, oh, they all went up for the hot bath. I bet they went to the racetrack.
That's great. This friend of yours, her father was which Rebbe?
No, her uncle was the Biana Rebbe.
Her uncle. Was this? Yeah. When I was talking to Ellie, he mentioned you had a friend whose father was a Rebbe, and to get to her room, you had to walk through.
That he mixed up. That was my friend, and she didn't want to live with her family. So she was being raised by the Biana Rebbe, and to get to her room, I had to go through their bedroom. But they always called me over to ask about Zaydeh or to tell me a little story. It was very comfortable. But I want you to know a nice thing that happened. I was in Teaneck, where my children are for Shabbos, and they made an announcement of a Rusam, an engagement between somebody, and they mentioned the Kala, that she lived in Lakewood. And the name, I went online, and I got it, and I called my friend Gita. I said, Gita, Mazel Tov, I heard about this. And so she said, you must come to the hospital. You must come. I said to Marcel, she's crazy, 2.5 hours from Long Beach. But Marcel said, we are going. You always talked about her. And when I got there were 2 simchas. One was the Kala. The other was that she had connected to her other family. You know, she didn't want to go live with her father because he had been married and had kids. And now they were all together at the wedding. And they were all waiting for me, because she told them. But I was so happy to see this family united. Anyway, I think I'm talking too much.
No, not at all. You're not speaking at all too much. We're loving this.
Sorry, we're here because we want to hear you talk.
Okay, what am I supposed to say? So that's it, you know.
Well, yeah, you said Zaydeh had his own shul.
He did. First, he had it on. First was on Rivington Street, and then the city bought it because they wanted to build projects. So then he bought a shul on 8th Street, and that was Zaydeh's shul. And Zaydeh davened all the time, and he was wonderful. He just was. You want me to tell you the worst Zaydeh story? The one that took my new husband a long time to recover from because he was traumatized. Okay, so we had this minhag. Every Erev Yom Kippur, we'd go to Zaydeh's house and get brachas. But if you didn't get there early enough, you got the bracha in shul, you know, in the vestibule. Okay, so we go and he gives me a bracha, and my new husband, we got married in June. This is Yom Kippur. I told him we have to spend Yom Kippur with my family. And he gives everybody brachas. And I want you to picture this. There's all the little grandchildren there, you know, Zandi and all his family, everybody. And all of a sudden, Zaydeh faints. He's on the floor. He's out cold. The doctor comes, Dr. Coleman, you all know him. And he says, you have to go to the hospital. Guy nisht. Could barely speak. And the doctor kept saying, you know, he's checking him all over. He said, you really have to go to the hospital. Guy nisht. Anyway, he was there for a good 25, 30 minutes. And he said, listen, there's nothing else I could do for you. Guy nisht. So he went ahead and he put into his lungs, what do you call it? What do you call something that draws out fluid?
I don't know. What, they use like a big needle, a big syringe?
Something. And he pulled out 2 bottles of fluid from his lungs. And he said to him, yeah. And we're all watching. I can't tell you how many kids, because everybody used to come, first cousin, second, third, fourth, fifth, you know, for the no run. And there's Marcel standing there, you know, like, this is the family I just married into. The doctor said, look, if you're not going to go to the hospital, I have to leave. I did the best I could. I cleared your lungs, and I hope you'll be better. And he leaves. And 5 minutes later, Zaydeh gets up and he says in Yiddish, it's time for Kol Nidre. He goes to the Yom. He davens Kol Nidre the whole night. There was not a dry eye in the shul. I'm telling you, the level of kavanah must have been unbelievable. But he davened the whole thing. The next day, my new husband Marcel said, I can't get over it. How? But he did not daven. The next morning, Uncle Moshe davened. But the point was, he got up and he did that. And something I will never, ever forget. I don't think anybody could who was there. So that's my last Zaydeh story, except to tell you that it's funny that my oldest son must have picked up some of his shtick, because Simi used to go and blow shofar for the shut-ins in Atlantic Beach. And when Zaydeh was nifta, my father felt he should get the shofar. Okay? And one time Aunt Goldie called me and said, listen, we don't want any friend that's davening in our shul. Zaydeh's gone. Uncle Moshe is not feeling well. So will you daven for us? He said, sure. I think it was 18 or 19. And Aunt Goldie called to tell me that his motions when he took out the shofar is exactly like Zaydeh's. And I said, okay, I really believe now in mysticism, because Simi, who's my only chassidus kid, he's the only one who got a bracha from Zaydeh before he was nifter. Ellie's already named for him. But I said, that's it. He gave you that in your blood. That's it. Anyway.
How old was Zaydeh at this time?
You know what? How do I know? As a kid, he was old. He had a beard, he had a shrine, but he had a happy smile and twinkly blue eyes. I have no idea how old he was.
I guess, like, how long after the Yom Kippur did he pass away?
Oh, I could tell you, because I got married in June. I had Simi in June. And then I had Ellie 2 years later. Ellie was already named for him.
So it was
So
basically
it's probably 2.5 years afterwards. And Rav Moshe Feinstein was masked with him because he was his best friend. And I remember I was so excited. I mean, not that he was nifter, but that Rav Moshe. Anyway.
Yeah.
Especially since I went to school with his daughter-in-law.
So tell us, did Zaydeh and Bubba, they were married before they came over, or they got married in New York?
Oh, this is very interesting. Because since Zaydeh was a Yassim, and so was Bubba, apparently my father told me they were engaged even before she was able to be a real wife. So they came over together. And Bubba never left the shtetl. She dressed that way. She only spoke Yiddish. And I was told she was very bright, that when Zaydeh would go to learn with the Rebbe, she ran the business in, where were they? Galicia. So, but you know, like we had a minhag every Erev Shabbos. We had the 2 Bubbas living in the same apartment building. My mother would cut off a little bit of everything she made. We bring it to them, and they give us back. She used to say, so the little Bubba, how is she today? Well, she smiled all the time, so I guess she was happy. Or she looked sad when she told me the story today. I never understood a word she said, because I was one of these brats who didn't want to learn Yiddish because I didn't live in a shtetl. Later, of course, I picked it up because language is easy for me. Anyway, oops. I want to make sure you could see me. Anyway.
You're good.
Wow. So
what can I tell you? Zaydeh was very special. He had a huge levaya. And I was so proud to be his granddaughter. I really was. You know, we used to go Hanukkah. He used to give us Hanukkah al pi Kabbalah. He used to figure out and talk to us. Everyone got separately. He didn't come with the whole group, you know. But These are the things I remember. Bubba would make these things called Zibbelplatzel. I don't even know what they are. She used to limp from the kitchen to the tish and back and forth. And also, he had the most beautiful sukkah I have ever seen. He took the whole yard, and the walls were made of old parochises. And it was beautiful. I mean, I never got in there because I was a female, but it was always very busy. And my father used to tell me they used to go, all the Fogel boys, to cut schach on the Jersey Shore.
What do you mean? The women weren't allowed into the sukkah?
Not really, no, because there were many men in there, no. At least this woman wasn't.
That's great. Wow.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to, Yes.
So just going back, so Zaydeh and Bubba got married in Galicia.
Probably in Zizna, Zavafrost, or maybe Rav Tzadok, but yes.
Right. I remember.
Over.
They had
we heard that Rav Tzadok in Europe. You should know.
What was that?
I think Uncle Joe might have been born even when they came. Because maybe not. Anyway. But, you know, he was also very stubborn. They tell you about my father's wedding?
No.
Okay, my mother's family and this family, they come from the same shtetl. Zizna Zavachras. My Zaydeh Yonah was a big tzaddik, and unfortunately, he died very early. He had pleurisy, he wasn't allowed to go out of the house, but he would bring money to someone he didn't want anyone to know that he died. But so the two families would go on vacations together. They knew each other, etc. My mother and father decided when they were very young they're going to get married. Okay, now they're already over 20. My mother, they want to get married, and Zaydeh says, "Nish, not till Cheskel gets married." My father was a twin, and his twin was 10 minutes older. And Zaydeh kept saying, no, 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 no. So finally, my Zaydeh Yoniako said to him, Shia Leizer, ech macha chassidus, Kims o kibnish. And
that is epic.
What?
That is amazing. It's amazing.
You know, then a year or two later, Uncle Charlie married Aunt Ann, but I love that story always. See, I don't know much Yiddish, but you see the fits a little bit. Yes, can you go?
You're coming or you're not coming, but we're making the wedding. That's amazing. That's amazing. And so they all came over around the same time, like Yonah, like Zaydeh, Yonah, Yaakov.
I really don't know that. I don't know. But I know that my Bubba Rivka only wanted the kids to be Americans. She did not have a shadel on. I think she was the picture of the ones who threw them into the harbor. But my Zaydeh Yoniako was a big Talmud Chacham. He was really special. And I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu took him so he didn't have to have Agmas Nefesh later. But you should know, in terms of the family, part of them came really back. And he has from Zera also.
Well, we're also his religious carrying the torch. So Baruch Hashem, right? Our whole family.
I'm named after.
Well, that's mommy was always that way. You know, I mean, your grandmother was wonderful. She was such a tzaddik, you can't imagine. You know, I didn't realize it until I grew up, and I remember some of the stories she told me. Well, we'll get to that another time.
No, by all means, jump on in.
My mother was president of an organization called Eliezer Yoldos, which would help.
One more time, what was that? The organization was called what?
Eliezer Yoldos. Here in Israel, it's called, it has another name. It's right here in Geula. I'll think of it in a second. And, you know, she used to really put her whole heart into it. One time she came home, and then, Mommy, you look like you're crying. Said, yeah, sit down here. And she told me, I just came back from Williamsburg. I walked into the house. The baby was sleeping in a drawer. They used towels for a diaper. I gave them a check for $25, which today would be obviously more like $300. Because they couldn't stop kissing me. And then I told them tomorrow there's going to be a crib delivered. and diapers and all the needs that the baby needs. And she said, Paula, you can't imagine poverty like that. That had such an impact on me. At that point, I had such pride for my mother because my mother used to go around collecting in Muncie. And I won't say who, one of my sisters used to say, I can't stand Mommy is snoring. But after that, I said to my sister, Mommy is doing great divrei chesed. Don't you ever use that word again. You know, if she had multi-million dollars, she would be giving it to them. But anyway, so after 14 years, she gave up the presidency because she wanted to become, she was becoming the secretary of behest, was, you know, and I was zocher to actually present her with a charm, which I now have. Anyway, that's the story I'll never forget. That's what I mean, how that you don't teach your children by telling them what to do. You know, they have to see these things. Yes? Good stories? Want more?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
You said earlier also that the Zaydeh used to have a tish and there were tons of people there. Was that in his apartment or in the shul?
In his apartment. He had a dining room. It was, I thought in those days, huge, but how huge could it be in a tenement? But it was always full, and always good mirrors and good singing. And, you know, I was a kid. You know, if I could go backward now, I would have spent much more time with them. But, you know, what did I know? You know, Baruch Hashem was at our wedding, you know, and my husband was traumatized after that by Yom Kippur. And yeah, who was that? Simi's. Was he at Simi's bris? I'm going to tell you, at Ira's bar mitzvah in Muncie Park Hotel, Bubba was still alive. Oh, Aunt Goldie felt she should come, and she was in a bed in a room, and I just had Esther. She was born in October. This was Purim. I was telling my sister, you have to have a Purim theme, Shoshanas Yaakov. I read Megillah at night. So we brought the baby to Bubba, and she thought it was her own baby from years ago. And everybody in the room, through a lot of the family, no dry eyes. It was so beautiful. Yiddishkeit, Mama. That was my daughter Esther, and I think she was given many brachas because she had such wonderful music. Anyway.
Wow.
So as far as Zaydeh goes, you know, buried in Elmont Cemetery. And he had an amazing life, I would say. He did follow the tzava of Tzadok to keep everybody from. And I told you, I thought as a kid, being from means being besimcha. But if I had to make a bracha in the house, it had to be with a smile, otherwise it wasn't good. You know, and just what I loved, I said, Daddy, hurry up with the Seder. Why? I gotta get to Zaydeh. I gotta steal his HaKohen. He would take me to the toy store and get me anything I wanted. My father didn't. Silly kids, right?
No, that's awesome. But you had the Seder. You lived in the same house or same building as... No?
No, we lived on East 5th Street and they lived on Avenue D between 2nd and 3rd.
The two Zaydehs lived together, though? Like, I remember hearing...
They lived in the same building, yes. They lived the same. Can you hold it a minute? I don't know who's ringing the bell, and I don't expect any delivery.
Oh.
Okay, things were so different years ago. I started behest Yaakov. My father told me my name was Paula. The kindergarten teacher said, nah, that's a Yiddish name. You are now Penina. And I was Penina all my life until my wedding invitation. My father said, it has to say Paula. I said, no, nobody knows me as that. He said, well, that's the name I gave you, so then don't get married. That's the only way I'll let you get married. Said, why didn't you tell the teachers in school? Anyway, my kids tease me. When they want to give me a jab, they say, Mommy, not Penina, Paralea. Penina Leia. Today, if you went to school with Penina Leia, they would change it to Paralea. Difference in the way times have changed. Anyway, what were we up to, Yehuda and Yaakov?
We were talking before about the Tish, which I'm still so interested in because I'm trying to understand, like, get a picture of Zaydeh, and you're painting a really cool picture of who he was in the community. It seems like you say he bought a shul and he had his own shul. So like
I don't know who bought it, but he had his own shul. It was called if you go to the Beis Olam, the whole chevra is listed there. And it was a whole chevra, people all the time. But for the Yom Ryan, all kinds of relatives showed up. As a kid, I loved it. I would dance in the hall with my cousins, who I never saw, and stuff like that. You know, what could I say? The year, I was all of 19, but that year I decided I'm going to get engaged. I davened near Bubba because she would cry for the whole Am Yisrael. I told you she didn't speak English, but they told me how smart she was because she had run the business in Europe. Zaydeh, by the way, owned a lumber yard, if you could believe that.
Is that how he made a parnasa?
A lumber yard, yes.
Did he also have coal?
No, that was my father.
Oh, was your father. Wow.
Okay, and you also mentioned before, you mentioned the tzava of Reb Tzadok to keep your children from.
But Tzadok said nobody could come to America. This is what my father told me. It was a trait from Medina. But you, Shia Leizer, you could go, but your tzava is everybody has to stay from. And Baruch Hashem, he was able to fulfill that.
What do you know about his relationship with Reb Tzadok?
I only know that he basically raised him because he was orphaned at a very young age. And he spent his life there, basically.
Saying Reb Tzadok must have been very old, and then we know that he reprinted the Sefer, the Shevet Miyehida, right? Of the Lublin Rebbe, who was after the Reb Tzadok.
Right. Well, Zaydeh called himself a Kutzke Lublin chassid, but I think Calvin Fogel, because he's the son of the Bechor of the family, might have more goodies. And I really wanted to email him and ask him to send me whatever he might have. But yeah, I'm satisfied with what I have so far, but I do want to know everything. You know, like his father's name was Yosef, and I never even knew Bubba's father's name, you know. So, interesting to tell you that my father and Zaydeh had the same yortzeit.
That is interesting.
What can you tell us about also just like growing up back then? I mean, you grew up, it doesn't sound like you felt like you were missing out, but you grew up and it was a different world then, growing up in a little 2-bedroom place, but yeah, with such a rich, rich family life and rich family life.
I never realized it was such a small apartment until I got older. Baruch Hashem, we moved to the co-ops while I was in Stern, but I just never felt it. We always had a very happy and enriched life. I told you we went to a hotel every summer. My father would come up for Shabbos only. So when I got engaged to Marcel, he said, I'm not a Shabbos husband. They'd asked me to be the head counselor of a camp, but he said, no. Anyway, what should I say? We always, I always taught, you want things, you can earn them. I did a lot of tutoring, and I enjoyed. Basically, I don't know what to say. My mother was always busy with her Nashim Achmanias, she took a job bookkeeping for a while, and then she was, as I said, she was the secretary of Beis Yaakov. And what can I say? I was always very busy. I loved school, always. And I went to Stern. I didn't dorm, back and forth. But I loved learning. That was another sore point. You know, my father always wanted a son. Somehow I became the son he never had. Like Rabbi Epstein, I always love Rabbi Moshe Epstein. He was the founder of the Hebrew Institute for the Deaf. The most amazing person in the world. He used to say, Penina, I'll tell your father you should be a boy and learn in the kollel. Don't tell my father that, please. Just say nice things, that's all. And he was a special man, you know, when he found I was going to Stern, he was very upset. He said, you know, it's easier to be influenced by Jewish girls than by not. And I told him, no, I'm going there because I get involved in everything and I want to keep up my Limudei Kodesh and etc. But to show you how he made shalom with me, unfortunately, they had a terrible accident in their house. The ceiling fell down on their children. That's how he found it. He went for the death. And his mother, his wife, was the teacher in Beis Yaakov in the kindergarten. He called me. He knew that Stern doesn't start till after Sukkot. Would I teach the kindergarten for his wife? So I did. It was all of 15 and a half, and there wasn't one complaint. He told me what I could do. And it was so wonderful. And when I got my check, I was so excited. You know, because I like to buy my own things. I never like to ask my parents. So
you were 15 and a half when you were going into Stern?
Yeah, but nobody knew it. No one knew it. I got elected president of the freshman class. My friend Gita, who was the one raised by the unrest, she said to me, why are you signing? You don't live in the dorm. I'm the only one who came from our school. Nobody's going to elect you, but I got elected. And the next year I was sophomore president. I was ultimately also president of the school my senior year. Anyway, what's the difference?
I'm just, so 1 second, take us through this. You couldn't have been 15 and a half going into Stern.
I was, because I started kindergarten. Rebbe Weinberg begged my mother because she needed girls. And my mother said to me, you're going to be in kindergarten for 2 years, which I expected, and I was very excited. That's how I learned what you shouldn't say to your children. Because after the first year of kindergarten, my mother said to me, Paula, you have to go to first grade because the Morah said you answer all the questions, nobody else will learn. So I thought it was a punishment. It wasn't. So I was already 1 year ahead. And in those days, they didn't know how to do enrichment. So in the 4th grade, they had like A, B, C. They decided everybody at A is going to skip the 5th grade. And they gave us all the books to do in the summertime. Then we did it. Had a table at the hotel on the lawn, and I would every day. Anyway, so that's what happened. Then in high school, they called me into the office. They said, would you like to make high school in 3 years? And my parents' eyes lit up. They wouldn't have to pay tuition. I said, if you agree, I promise you I'll become the worst kid in the world. I will fail every test. I'm not going out of high school at 14 and a half. So they agreed. So that's the way it was. You know, I never felt younger than anybody else because nobody ever asked me. I just fit in with them.
Wow.
What can I say? Life was very different in those days, let me tell you. As far as, you know, shidduchim, these things don't go. I won't even mention who met great Rabbanim and they married them at the cafeteria on the Lower East Side. The Rebbe didn't want us to go to the library because RJJ and Yusuf Tzverzushlaim were up the block, both of them. So, of course, you know, when you're in the library, you're bound to say, hello, how are you? So, on our senior trip to Washington, the bus pulled up by accident next to the RJJ bus. And all the girls jumped up to speak to them. And I swear, one of my Rebbes started to cry, which is the silliest thing. I said to my friends, get away from the windows, Rob so-and-so is very upset. But it was fun. Okay, I've given you too much.
Oh, it's great. I'm enjoying this immensely. Really, it's just because, you know, where we come from is so important. I absolutely love history. I love knowing where people come from. Whenever I meet people, I always ask them, where are you from? Where are your parents from? What's your background? What's your story? Because if you don't know someone's history, then how could you ever possibly connect with them? And if I don't know my own history, how can I?
I love the way you guys speak. I listen to your podcast. I'm very impressed. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you now. I'm very proud that you are my nephews. And what should I say? I don't know. As I said, I always loved to learn. I don't know what inspired me, but I just did, and it was wonderful. That is why I went to Stern, and I was very happy I did, because at that time they did away with it. You could go for 2 degrees at one time. One was in Lublin Kodesh, Bachelor of Religious Education. My other one I did in English, in liberal arts. So, you know, in order to get the second degree, you had to take 3 comprehensives. One in all of Tanakh, one in all of Jewish history, and one in all of Hebrew literature. I remember my father went out and bought me a set of Gret's history. I was reading it. So, you know, I got a really good education there. Li'ayin hara. You know, I wanted to be a doctor. My father was dying to be a doctor. Zaydeh didn't let me go to college. My father would not let me be a doctor. And being so young, I fell in for it. But you know what? Hashem knew better. I had a wonderful career in chinuch, and I wouldn't switch it for anything. It was very satisfying. And I read stuff about doctoring. I didn't even. But
Can you tell us a little bit about your career in chinuch and like what? Cause I know that you brought so much to. I mean, I hear all the stories from your family, from my mother, of all the people that say, "Oh, Morah Weber," and they heard of you and how much you affected them.
Well, let's start from the beginning, because you mentioned before that you got your start at 15 and a half teaching. What was it?
No, yeah, I graduated. I went to Stern, but when I graduated Stern, so I was 19 and a half, and I took a job. You know, it's funny. I had done student teaching in Manhattan, the Vermont, and they asked me to teach there. I didn't want to, also Manhattan Day School. So Dr. Schiff, he loved me, I loved him. He was in charge of the Board of Jewish Education at the time. He said to me, you know, there's a school that started a few years old. It's out in Lawrence. It'll take you an hour and a half to get there, but I think you'll love it because it's modern and I have good ideas, etc. So I had to give a model lesson, which I did, and they took me. And every day I took the subway out to Far Rockaway, and the secretary of the school picked me up. Matter of fact, when my mother-in-law wanted to take a look at me, because Marcel's from Far Rockaway, he said to her, you go to the train in the morning and you let me off, you'll see her. Anyway, and I started teaching there, and I just loved it. I can't explain. And Mr. Perlow, Olav Hashalom, he was amazing, you know. Gave me the chizuk I needed. He made me feel so good. He made me feel that I was always doing things right. He came to observe me twice a week, and I thought that's what every principal does. But he was into, you know, making sure that I would. So it was very wonderful. Only a year later, right away, I got engaged, and that's another story, because I did not want to go out with my husband. I told Friday, he's too old, and I have a million dates tonight. I don't need him. Anyway, we got married. The year after, right away, I had to tell him I was expecting. And this is a man, he was a real tzaddik. I will not say the expletive he used. And he said, what? I don't believe it. Anyway, what did he expect? I had just gotten married, you know, these things happen. Are you guys there? I don't hear you.
Yeah, that's too funny. No, we're here. That's incredible. That is really incredible.
But it was very much Bashir. I mean, I wouldn't talk about it on the podcast, but I had such a, like, was a charmed life, you know what? I used to dream, and then they would come true, you know. That's why I never had enough self-confidence, because, you know, I felt I didn't work that hard, and then I got the A, and you know what I mean? Even I remember my senior year, they wanted me to be editor of the yearbook, and I said to myself, I'll run for student council president. I'd much rather do that. Please, Hashem, help me win so I don't have to edit the yearbook. And kachaya.
Wow.
Anyway, what should I say? We have a wonderful family. My kids are delightful. You know, they're your cousins. And Baruch Hashem now with the Ninim.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
I just miss Uncle Marcel a lot, but, you know. that's the way it is. But the Shah decides, listen.
Can you tell us a little bit about Uncle Marcel and his story?
Oh yeah, I really want to write a book. I actually have to go up to Yad Vashem because I have very interesting documents. Marcel was born in Belgium. His father was born in Nuremberg, but somehow he married my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law came from a very Gera family, very. Matter of fact, such a family that the boys and brothers and sisters stayed at separate tables. But her parents died when they were very young, so they were given out to different people, and she landed up in Antwerp. Okay, so now the war came in, and my father-in-law told me that he was working someplace, and the man said to him, Max, get out of here with your family because it's not good. For the first time they tried to leave, they couldn't. The second time they got out, and from what I remember, but I know they went to France, they were in Lille, and my grandmother was Nifteris there. I don't understand why my friend couldn't find her kever, but someday I'll get there. And they went on to Spain and Portugal. But my husband said that his father felt that they were fascist countries, so that ultimately they might join with Hitler. So they sailed to Africa. They wanted to go into South Africa, but they couldn't get visas. So they traveled up north and they landed up in Portuguese Mozambique, which was neutral. Now, I would like you to know that I've never met anybody more royal or elegant than my father-in-law. If I had a thread hanging from my skirt, he would whisper in my ear, go change. He was immaculate and royal, but he was also very, very smart. He had to support the family. So to this day, I still didn't make shalom with it. He tended bar in the harbor. It was one of the roughest harbors, but he spoke many languages and he could communicate with all of the sailors. And of course, Hashem works his ways. In the back of the bar, there were two very special people, Malcolm Muggeridge and Huntington Hartford. They were head of the OSS, which is the precursor of the CIA. And they heard him speaking all these languages. They knew he was Jewish. They approached him at first and asked, when they steal the diplomatic pouch at night, would he take it home and they would translate it to French and bring it back early in the morning before it got sent to Berlin. Kachaya, but then they felt that he was too valuable just for that. So they recruited him into the spy network. I know Marcel said he was a little boy who was climbing up to look in the closet. He saw a gun. He ran away. He said, but I know where to go. So I came back. And
wow. My
father-in-law had a very big bodyguard. His name was Gonzalez. I don't know too much about it, but my daughter Esty, they wanted to put out a supplement to Long Island Newsday. It's a newspaper. They said, ask your grandparents if they have stories of the war. And she had the best story because she said it's neutral territory, They captured a German spy and they were driving him out. And the guy was very hungry. It was Pesach. He said, I need to eat something. So my father-in-law said, here. And as he was saying, he said, choke on it. It's Jewish food. It was matzah.
Wow.
So she loved that story, it was the best story. Anyway, but ultimately, the Germans complained because it's supposed to be neutral territory. So they had to leave. And I have a letter here. You come to my house, I'll show you all these things that I put together during the Shiva, which says, signed by the British consulate, giving permission for Max Weber and his children to travel to Palestine. Because here he worked for the British. But then he got there, and they went through many countries. Ultimately, they got to Haifa. As Marcel told us once a story at a yahrzeit, that a train, they went to all the different countries. They were in Egypt, and a train came by, and there was soldiers laying tefillin. Said, how could this be? It was a Jewish brigade, and they were traveling during the war.
A Jewish brigade of Egyptian soldiers?
Jewish soldiers.
From which army?
They joined the Allies.
Wow.
It's called the Jewish Brigade. If you go online, you will.
Oh, you're saying the Jewish Brigade? It was Jews that were living in Eretz Yisrael, and they joined up. Yes.
Right. So, my husband told this to the kids. Everybody was I was probably more flabbergasted than they were. Anyway, he went to Haifa, and I have a letter here which says, "Dear Max, would you love to continue doing the kind of work you did?" So Marcel said, my father wasn't going to work for the British in Palestine. Out of there, he needed them, but now he wasn't. So he said, no, thank you. And again, I can't believe what he did to raise family. He was a truck driver. But when the war was over, the CIA, they brought them to America. That's how they came.
So how long were they in Israel for?
I really don't know. You know, I really, well, I can tell you if I look at the letter that gave them permission to go, then, you know, as soon as the war was over, they were brought to America. And I even have a letter here from the head of the CIA. And it said, "Dear Max, I came to visit you at work the other day and you weren't there. I heard you were ill. I hope you're feeling better. See you soon." You know, and the stationery is there, CIA. That's all. What can I say? Tabar Hashem. Back to America. Marcel's grandfather was with them. And also another cousin was raised there, somebody who had also been, orphaned during the war.
His grandfather had gone to America earlier on?
No. They came together. I'm not exactly sure how, but that's Rav Simcha, for whom Sydney is named. And I guess Mordechai was the other grandfather, because Marcel is named for him. Yeah, the Rebbe is one of his great-grandparents, and Lim Naruv is another one. Marcel, I always say, another Nicole Adam, never wanted to speak about any of these things. You know, guys, I sneaked his two snickers out of the house.
You sneaked his
what? I never
what?
allowed to hang them up, but I used to show them to my grandchildren because I thought it was an inspiration.
One more time. What did you sneak out of the house?
What?
Well, I couldn't hear what you said. What did you sneak out of the house?
The two dots of, Yara and Yud and Yud. He never wanted anyone to see it and nobody to know it. And I felt it's important for the grandchildren, so I took it. It's in the closet here. Now I'm debating whether I can hang it up since he was nefter. So what could I tell you? He got that afterwards, meaning he was already in America and then he came back to Eretz Yisrael. He went back to Eretz Yisrael to learn.
And where was he learning?
Yeshiva Hebron. One of these is signed by, I could get it out, Rav Herzog, one of them. I don't know. I didn't even know at the time that there were two things, Yara, Yud, Yud. So he had them both. But he never wanted anyone to know that he was a rabbi. He said, that's private. That's for my own stuff. He loved to learn. He really did. He used to walk around the house. You remember my house in Long Beach?
Of course.
A very big library beside his private library. He used to walk around and he didn't know I was listening. He used to say, oh my gosh, when am I going to be able to learn all these svarim? Come up from a long day at the office and right away, safer in the library. It's funny because when we first got married, I was worried, Maybe I had gone out with so many boys from Berlin and what's one, Sharvadas, and I'm marrying somebody from YU. But he was the right one. I have not telling you this on the podcast, but this was ordained by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Such a funny story. I should probably write a book.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Take a break.
More questions?
Yeah, I taught
in high school. I taught lower school. I also gave 1 or 2 courses at night. But one time they asked me at the Board of Jewish Education, I was at the Teacher Center, can you give a workshop on tefillah? So I went and called different principals and Rebbeim, and I asked all of them, how do you feel about teaching tefillah? And I got an unanimous answer. Oh. So I decided I'm going to do something about it. And it took a lot of years, but it really worked. I decided that translating word for word doesn't give you kavanah. Baruch atah Hashem melech haolam, blessed you, O Lord our God. Come on. What does it mean to a kid? So I came up with this philosophy. It took a long time. That every tefillah that a child is taught, they have to have a personal connection. And if you understand what I'm saying, and I told you this before. You don't want me to do it now, do you? Are we off?
No, we've spoken a little bit about this, but I want to hear it. And the truth is that I've never really heard your whole philosophy and the whole way of doing it. I've heard bits and pieces, but
okay, I'll do it very quickly. The first thing I said is the child has to know if the bracha, if the tefillah is a thank you to Hashem, is it a bakasha, is it hallel, saying good things about Hashem. Okay. Second is they have to connect. Even moda ani lefanecha. How come you have babysitters? Then it had to come to the point that the parents trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why we all go to sleep. But while they're not home, they want to have somebody else watching. So that, it meant something to the kids, at least with Moda. And I used to also try to always connect in the upper grades. I would do Moda and go back to Moda Manach Lach to show all the times these things are all over the place, even in, Elokai Neshama, Modani Lefanecha. So I taught them, even the youngest kid, like the categories. That's important. Then I decided to help the teachers learn, what do I mean by connecting? So my favorite one, and I see so many of the letters the teachers wrote when I left. No, so you want me to go through the Tzurach heavily?
Sure.
Okay, so they once, through the Yom Yon, they asked me to give a workshop on tefillah. I said, please entitle it Teaching Tefillah on the Primary Grades. There were about 200 people in there, mostly women. And just before I started, a whole crew of Rebbes showed up in the back. And I really wanted to bolt, but I didn't. And I gave the shiur, and I spoke about how important it is to understand the connections personally. I said, okay, let's do Lamaisa. So I told everybody to close their eyes and to picture themselves in the ocean swimming, and suddenly you get a cramp. And it's, oh my God, it's cold and the current suddenly picks up. That's it, say Shema, you're finished. But no, reach out your right hand, reach out. And there's a rope there, pull on it, whew, made it, you're above water. This is what you say every day at Adon Olam, kids. Sur chevli b'yeit tzara. And this chevel is always there. Don't even have to be in such tzara. You wake up at night, I tell the kids, and the truth of the matter is, afterwards, these Rebbes came and said, why did you call this teaching tefillah on the primary grade? I said, because that's what I thought I was doing. No, thank you so much. Now we feel we could reach the words. And by the way, one of them said to me, the Zohar talks about the chevel. Oh my God, I'm being validated by the Zohar. Baruch Hashem. It was funny. But anyway, I want you guys to know how important that Tzur Chevli has been to me. It's helped pull me through Uncle Marcel's illness and his patira. And honestly, my poor kids used to suffer with me because I'd come up with ideas for tefillah and I'd play it with them on Shabbos. So that's all tolerated till I found all the books that you see published about pictures and tefillah, they all come from my original workshops. Nobody before that ever thought of really bringing tefillah to life. But I'm very hung up on it, and I still feel now. I had one teacher, I was sent away for a conference. She said, Morah Weber, can you come up? You're going to be so proud of me. The girls are davening mincha, I want you to see. And I ordered books. You weren't here, so you couldn't sign for them. So I go up, and the girls sign mincha. Baruch Hashem, blessed are you, O Lord our God. Tamar, this is exactly the opposite of what I was talking about. She said, but I thought you'd be so proud. They know what they're saying. I said, Mama, look, kol hakavod to you. I'm so proud of you that you went the extra mile. But let's collect them and we'll talk about it. So, she wasn't upset because I made her feel good. You always have to do that, by the way. You don't. But this is what I always felt. I mean, even, like you can do Adon Olam with high school students. Make sure they have a Tanakh. What do you mean? Hu haya, hu hove, hu yeh. Gotta look up in the Nevi'im where it says Achrit Hayamim, Hu Haya, Ruach Elokim Ruach. There's a lot of things you could do to make tefillah come alive, and you should. And then there are always, these special words, ahava and leiv, makes kids really happy. Even teaching Eretz Yisrael, once gave a workshop on teaching Eretz Yisrael through tefillah. The Havayenu L'Shalom, the Sita Einu V'Dvulecha. You're just going to come. You just don't come because you're running away, but you're coming upright and you want to be rooted in Eretz Yisrael and stuff, Anyway, so I found tefillah as a wonderful key for a lot of things. And what else can I say? I really enjoyed, I spent my last years really mentoring, teaching teachers how to be teachers. I had all my friends used to say to me, how do you get up every morning and you go up to a school? I said, you don't understand. I love it. I don't do the same thing every single day. And that's really the way I felt. I don't think it was ever a day. I mean, when I was sick, every teacher called, Morah, you must be really sick. You stayed home. And I only stayed home when I was really very sick. I used to pick up bad bronchitis. But what can I say? Here I'm a little lost in Eretz Yisrael because I never pushed myself ever to anything. And I would get calls all the time. I was busy all the time. So here I came. And, I did some subbing at Mechlala. And I also lectured in a different program. And, and all the kids, that's my kids. I mean, they're college students. That's it. Take courses at Matan. I missed that, but when Marcel was sick, I didn't want to have anything steady. I wanted to be available always for him. So, what can I say? I've had really, Baruch Hashem, a wonderful life. One of the things I said to Marcel, please don't go, please. We have so many brachos to share. I don't want to have to deal with them alone. But Kadosh Baruch Hu differently, and I keep that chevel, and whenever I get really down, I know it sounds crazy, but.
No, it's really beautiful and it's very real. It's very real.
It's for you, it's for me, it's for everybody. You just have to believe in it.
Where did you draw from? Like when you were creating and trying to give over this hargasha of tefillah and this connection and these ideas, where did you draw it from?
From here. Look, as a teacher, I always felt, I told you before, you have to experience what you're doing. You can't just do it. Like, I had a Rebbe. This is such a funny conversation. There was a boys' school and a girls' school, and I used to push for Limud Day for Ivris, Lashon HaKodesh, because I felt you don't teach a kid a pasuk, you translate it in English, then they're not going to know it the next time. If you really want to create a real learner, they have to internalize the language. So this Rebbe said to me once in the teacher's room, Morah Weber, I'm so sick of hearing Ivris, Shmivris. I said, you know what? Okay. We just came back from the Yom Noram, and I bet you out-chuckled me. Oh, you should have seen the look on his face. So proud. I said, but tell me, when you daven the Hinei, I use their accent. Hinei ha'chayim b'yad ha'yotzim. Did you know what you were saying? I felt like Kadosh Baruch Hu molds me like a piece of clay. He looked at me and said, I never wanted you to teach boys to speak. That's the last thing in the process of language development. I wanted them to be able to have a feeling, not just shuckle. He said, why didn't my Rebbes tell me this when I was learning? I said, because they're not Rebbes. He laughed. And the next time I went to that wing of the school, I couldn't believe we used to have, what we're going to do during the day. Davening, tefillah, chumash, Gemara was all in Hebrew now. He said to me, and I never forgot that conversation because it was very important to me. And I just said, I also have to teach teachers them to understand that the children you teach have to feel respected. They have to feel respected. And after that, Yira always comes before Ava. And proof, which I use in many lectures later, I was in my office, and the principal called. He says, Morah Weber, I hope you won't get upset. I'm sending down 6 boys to you because they did something very rude with their Rebbe or whatever it was. I said, why me? You know, send me the girls. No, you taught them in 1st grade, 4th grade, and 6th grade. So they come down, and in the middle of this one young man who was always so good. He always could answer anything, but he never raised his hand and he never volunteered anything. I was speaking to him. I used to only speak in Hebrew. I said, how could you do such a thing like this? You know, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, whatever it is. And then I looked at him and I said, you would never do something like that to me. And this kid who never opened his mouth, it was like a movie. He said, but Morah Weber, you respect us. You know, my chin went down to the floor. I couldn't even speak. So I said, thank you very much. I'm sure all your teachers respect you. You have to understand they wouldn't be teaching otherwise. I said, but even if they didn't, you don't act with a lack of derech. But I never forgot that, and I used it, not through me. I want them to know it happened to me, but, you know, I would lecture to other teachers and make them think this happened to somebody else. Because I learned from this kid how important, and I didn't realize I had been doing that, but that's all. But that's why it says, and what's the first mitzvah after that? Shinantam levanech. Without ahava, you can't be a teacher. But in order to get the ahava, you have to have kavod every year that goes before it. Listen, I'm not giving you very Torah. I'm talking to my nephews.
This is beautiful.
I love that. That's a very powerful story. Such a powerful story.
Yeah. And I was also very lucky. I had wonderful, wonderful teachers. Don't laugh. You know, Rabbi Freifeld from the Shar Yashuv, he married Sarah Cohen, who was my teacher. And Sarah Freifeld became a very close friend of mine. She was at my wedding. Every time I went shopping in Loman's and Crown Heights, I brought her my things to see. And then we were colleagues in Tag High School. I still remember she gave such a lecture during one of the wars. She said to the girls, we are also in Tzava. Our uniforms are the way we dress. And our codes are the way we daven. I never forgot it. It was so moving to me. And I was very close friends with her, but I never told anyone. It was like my treasure. When she was in Terrace, nobody told me about the Levaya. I lived in Long Beach. And I found out I was inconsolable. But I understood, and I went to be, because it was like a treasure. I don't want to let people know, oh, I'm such a good friend. I knew she was very sick that year. She said, Penina, I'm asking you a favor. Please daven for me. I said, me? I should daven for you, sir? I don't collect your favor. Penina, you'll get me a few days. You'll get me more time. I know. So I poor Marcel, I said to the kids, listen, I have a special mission this Yontif. You will bother your father for everything and anything. Do not talk to me. So you know, a lot of interesting stories. She was so special. Met her once in Far Rockaway, and she ran a seminary for a kiruv. So she parked the car and just, you know, I want you to meet. This is Alyssa, this is Susan. She whispered in my ear, come see them 6 months from now. Because, you know, they're wearing pants, whatever. She just was so special. I used to feel that the star did not shine as brightly anymore when she was in. Anyway, that's it. So I tell you, we're very fortunate. Oh, you want to hear a really funny story?
Yeah.
And that's the end. I told you, Zaydeh was very inspiring. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I would come back. I'd be flying. My Rebbe said to me, Penina, give me the chassidus, Favinu Malkeinu. And I said to myself, oh, this is not going to work. Because I was like in a different world until my friends. So I know I did Avinu Malkeinu very dramatically. I was embarrassed, but I couldn't help it. 2 years ago, I was at a shir here at Yeshurun, and some girls from Beisaka were there. And one girl said, oh my God, I remember you. You were the one with that Avinu Malkeinu 60, 70 years ago.
That must have been some Avinu Malkeinu.
I was so embarrassed afterwards because I really knew all my Hebrew. I learned it. Had very good teachers. Sarah Freifeld. She only spoke Hebrew, and you know, you have to take it. People have chush halasho, and you're very blessed when you have that. So I'm also Yoni Yaakov. Anyway, that's that. But that was so funny. I could not stop. The whole day I was laughing. But I could go in and tell you stories and stories, but I won't.
Yeah, this was really, really, really special.
Yeah, we'll do it again. We'll get some more stories. We don't have to do them all in one day. I'm sure.
I can tell you about Aunt Goldie. She was so special. And I told you about Uncle Joe.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about him, but you can share a little bit.
No, just that everyone talks, my father used to be so proud that he was his older brother because he was a Maggid Shir in Borough Park and everyone loved him. And as a kid, I could not get over the fact that he was a Bechor and he was nifter the first Seder night. I still now don't understand. So, these are things that they stay in your memory. I know they will cover him on the second day Yontif because he said a tzaddik doesn't wait. And the second day is Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golios. So that's all.
How old was he when he was nifter?
I really don't know.
You were very young. You were a little girl.
Yeah, I was a kid. Yeah, but I knew enough to know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected Bechor on the first Seder night. So
But he was nifter after Zaydeh.
Oh.
Years.
No, he wasn't, and that's another thing. We were told that we had to stay close to Zaydeh and Baba so they will not find out about the Ketira till after Pesach. Yeah. And I remember my parents said, you have to go with them. They will go into the drive. It's your chance to be there. Don't let anybody come over to them because people know it's Chol Hamoed. They didn't want my Zaydeh and Baba to have any atzvus during Pesach. It was very difficult. And then, of course, they sat children.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, I think I probably was a young teenager at that point. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember these things so clearly.
How old were you when Zaydeh was nifter?
Oh, that's easy. I got married at 20, 21. I guess I was 21. Because Ellie is named for him. Simi had already been born. He's named for Simcha for his paternal grandfather, who I loved, even though I didn't know. But such good things about him. And then Ellie, couldn't be Yehoshua Eliezer either because my father was Yehoshua Menachem Mendel. So, but I'm very hung up on, I write for every bar mitzvah and everything, a long poem about names. I am convinced that when parents choose a name for their child, they should think very carefully because every name has a bracha. And every bracha that you give your child will come true. So we call him Eliezer Shalom, and he never wanted to get into fights. We gave him, that bracha. Ilan, we call him Simcha Ilan, because, Ilan Alan, Pamav Rechecha. Yes, and young Meir, and he lights up everything. Meir was for Marcel. He had an uncle who was killed in the camps and didn't have anybody left over. And Esther, I always called her Esther Rivka, but my Baba Rivka was still alive. And it was just before Shabbos. Marcel had come at 6 a.m. to the hospital, decide what we would name the baby. And my mother's never yet. So she said, could you tell me what you can name the baby since we're not there? So I said, she said, but Baba Rivka is alive. So Marcel was in court. I said to his secretary, please make sure Mr. Weber calls you. Tell him it's urgent. And we said, what should we call it? So we added Shira. And I said to her, you never shut up as a baby. That was the bracha. Anyway.
Too funny.
But, yes. If you Yaakov and Yehuda, come on. Those are special names. You got to live up to them. And you do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Yaakov is named after, the Yonah Yaakov. And I'm
right,
named
and Yoni is named the other half, Yona.
right. Well, exactly. And
He was very special. You should know. He really was. People told me he was a real tzaddik. Didn't push himself in anything. What?
My mother said she's named after she's named after Yoni Yaakov also.
Yes, that's ridiculous, though. My mother said, I want to name Toby after my, father, since I have no sons. And so I said, Yonina's a nice name. No. Yona is a Tob in Yiddish.
Right.
So she got named Toby and Tova, which has nothing to do with Zaydeh Yona.
I don't know. I like it.
I was happy.
I always liked it that me and my mother are named after the same person. I enjoy that.
What's her second?
She doesn't have a second name, and that's why Yaakov didn't have Yona.
That's why. So we took the Yona, and Marcel had this uncle who had no descendants, Meir. But right. You know what's funny? Yoni's bar mitzvah is Shabbos Hanukkah, and Yona Meir is 8 letters. I designed a monogram with the bird as the Shabbos, and the 8 letters, Yona Meir.
Beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's, you know what? I have a new great-granddaughter. She's ready to be a year old. Ellie's grandchild. You have a cousin, Rachel. Ellie's daughter. Anyway, they named the baby Hadar. And when they did, I said, oh my God, every time I look at this child, I told you this? I say, Shlosha Shutafim Ba'adam. Hashem, Abba Ve'ima. And this is Hadar. Hashem, David, and Rachel.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Every time I look at her, I think, wow, you're my little bracha.
Beautiful.
That's fantastic.
Oh, well, guys, enough. You got to come through Shabbos, and then you do the talk.
Yes. Amen. Thank you, Aunt Paula. This was really, really incredible. We enjoyed. It was a fun morning spent together. And, yeah, Bezrat Hashem. Hopefully we're going to keep on carrying the torch of this incredible family.
Shut up. I would tell you some other cute stories, but I'm not going to do it.